Welcome back to Charlie's Mailbox, where I answer actual questions from actual people in my inbox. This week is a continuation from last time when we were talking about securely, and we'll introduce a few more features. I'll link the video from last time in the description so you can review. This time we're going to take a look at access plans, collections, and class settings. So let's jump back into Securely. Remember, it's Securely Classroom that we are looking for. And you may recall last time that we took a look at web links, and these are simply URLs, addresses of sites that you may want your students to be using. You might have wondered last time, what if I want to share more than one URL at a time? And that will be addressed by using what are called either collections or access plans. Let's begin with access plans. We're going to find that here at the bottom left. And if we choose Add Access Plans, you'll notice we have sites on one side, apps on the other. It's sites that we are interested in. And what it's going to do is allow us to either block certain sites or only to allow certain sites. So to show you how this works, I'll just call this one Test. And I can add a description if I like. I can choose to make this public, by the way, so other users can use it as well. For now, I'll leave it private. And when I click Add Sites to Block or Allow, I need to make a choice. If I choose Block Sites, it means that I want to block specific sites, but allow any other site. Of course, any site that our school filter doesn't also block. If I choose Allow Sites, what I mean there is I'm going to list certain sites that students can use, and they will then be blocked from any other site. Let me show you how that one would work, for example. Let's say Allow Sites. And let's say I'm doing an activity, and I'm going to choose My Web Links here. And let's say for the activity I'm doing, right, I want students to be able to use Google Docs. I want them to be able to use this page from Mozilla, and maybe I want them to be able to get into Kahoot, let's say these three. And I'll click Add. So this access plan now will allow students to get to those three sites, but not any other sites. Now, before we leave, make sure you click Save. I've already clicked it here so that you don't lose your access plan. And let's go back here. And I just wanted to point out, if we go to Add Access Plan, and again, we're using sites here. And if instead we choose Block, it's exactly the opposite. It means that, allow any other site other than sites that you block. I also want to point out that there is a manual way to do this. You can enter either a list with commas or just put them each on a separate line, and you can manually enter URLs here for blocking or access. Finally, I want to point out that all of this used to be called blocking plans, and they switched it to the more positive sounding access plan. So just in case you were confused by that. So we'll go out of there. We now have our access plan. Let's now take a look at how to use it. Here I am at my classes, and if I go to my CVU test course and I start the class, you'll notice over here on the left, we've seen this screen before in the last video. We skipped over default access plan, but here is where we can click the plus sign. And if I choose My Access Plans, here's the test access plan that we just created, and I can choose Select Plan. And so now when I start the session, students will then be tied to that access plan. Let me actually do it to show you something else as well. You'll notice that the access plan here says test. And I did want to show you something interesting. If I do the pull down here, it's showing me that 2 of students are on the test and no students are on no access plan. And the reason that's interesting is because it shows you that you can actually apply different access plans to different students. For example, I could say that CVU test student should be on a different access plan. So if I come over here, and let me just add an access plan to show you. I'll just put in my Google Classroom one. Okay. Now what I can say is I want CVU test student to be on that access plan. And now you'll notice, see how one student's on tests and the other one is on Google Classroom. So you can have several access plans available and even apply them to different students. Notice something else? Notice how I was able to add an access plan even though I didn't start the session with one. So you can do that from the pull down here. You can add an access plan after the session is already underway. I'm going to stop my class and come back to my dashboard here. I see, by the way, there is actually something called dashboard that's separate from this thing. So I've been calling it dashboard, but click the icon to see your classes. And you might be wondering about what's the difference between an access plan and what's called a collection. So if I go to my web links, I can also create collections. I think I'm going to skip that because it's a very fine-grained difference, and I think you're just going to find it easier to work with access plans. But certainly see the security documentation if you're interested in how a collection is different from an access plan. But what I would like to move to is how you can set class default settings. So again, let me get back to my classes here. If I go to my CView test course, and last time we skipped clicking the three dots, but today we'll do it, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at class settings. And what you're going to notice is that all these options right here under class session options are exactly the same ones that you see when you start a session each time. The difference here is you can have a default set. So for example, I can say plus, and I want to use that test access plan that we just created. Now, every time I start that class, it's going to start by default with that class. Again, here's that collection piece. This is going to apply a site lock to a collection of sites. So it's going to lock students to those sites. Again, that can be accomplished with an access plan instead. So I think to keep things understandable, we'll stick with that. Here are those same settings that we saw last time. The other default that you can set is the class schedule. I would be very careful about this though, because suppose that your class does typically meet on a Thursday. If you turn that on for it to be every single Thursday, and it happens to be a Thursday during school break and a student is using their Chromebook, you really don't want to have your securely session active. So I'm going to discourage you from setting the class schedule and just say start the class manually when you need to. It's fairly straightforward as we saw last time. This is also where you can play around with students and groups, but I would encourage you not to because you really want that information coming over from Google Classroom. Finally, you can add a co-teacher here in this setting. So those are the default settings that you can set for your class. I hope you found this video helpful, and again, happy to help you get started or unstuck using Securely. Thanks for watching. Keep those questions coming.